Welcome to this presentation about how to adapt to COVID-19 as a freelancer. I'm Maxime Vandenberg and I'll take you through this presentation today. But first, who is this for? If you're not able to perform your usual work due to the lockdown restrictions, or you're not immediately aware of how to perform your work online, this may be something for you to follow. You'll typically work as a freelancer or in any other type of self-employed form, either as a self-employed person or maybe a contractor. People that may also be interested in this are people who work in a physical in-person market. So think of hairstylists, makeup artists, yoga instructors, or any type of personal training, and so forth. What we're going to be covering. First, we're going to talk about how to adapt to the online working world. Then we're going to brainstorm new ways to deliver your service for the online world and take you through a framework to help you with that. We'll also give you some examples of online adaptations of services we have seen on our platform. Then we're also going to quickly take you through how to set up an online experience through Mammalo, which is the best way to get online as quickly as possible. And lastly, we'll take you through some tips and tricks. Here we go. Adapting to the online working world. First of all, in-person activity is probably not going to be possible for the foreseeable future. So right now is the best time to actually hedge for that and create something that people will want to use and potentially also open yourself up to a new market way beyond this actual pandemic so that people can book you remotely well into the future. What you need to work online? First of all, a stable internet connection. If that is not present, you won't be able to actually give any type of online experience, and that will greatly harm your ability to gain any customers. Two, you need a comfortable working space, so dedicate some space for that, whatever it may be that you're doing. It's kind of like going to your office. It's nice to sort of have that space to focus. And if you don't have a separate space, at least create that space wherever you may be during the period of your working hours. So whether that's, let's say, your dining table or maybe even your room, you can sort of switch some stuff up to make it your working space during working hours. Three, it's nice to have a working structure. Now that you're not commuting anymore, people tend to kind of lose their normal routine, which may affect their working abilities. So it's nice to have a working structure. So some sort of routine in the morning and in the afternoon for when you start and end work. And last but not least, time management skills are vital. It would be very useful to get yourself a virtual calendar if you don't have one already, just to get you organized and set up properly. Next, brainstorming new ways to deliver your service for the online world. There's a framework that we like to give to our experts on mammalo.com, and it first involves a couple of questions that you need to answer yourself so that you can understand your position. So first, can I perform my service online in a similar manner? If this is possible, then you might already have a solution to adapting to this current situation. Two, can I teach rather than perform? If you tend to actually perform your service, now may be the time to look into whether or not you can teach it at a distance. Three, can I showcase and teach what may otherwise be a behind-the-scenes act of my profession? A good example to think of here is photography. Usually you'd hire a photographer to come to your wedding or your event, but you never really see the editing behind the screens. And that's something that as a photographer you obviously need to be able to do. So is there a way that maybe you can sell your teaching skills and teach rather than obviously getting customers, teaching other photographers how to edit these photographs, or maybe even amateur photographers that just want to start? So the four words that you basically need to remember are teach, adapt, guide, and recreate. And the next slide will describe why. Here you'll see the circle, so teach, adapt, guide, and recreate. So let's start with teach. Can I teach my skill at an amateur level? So just because you're teaching doesn't mean that they won't need you anymore for the real thing. So we get a lot of people asking us questions such as, but if I give away, my secret sauce, then no one will ever book me anymore. And that's not the case. You've obviously put in a lot of hours and a lot of effort into being a specialist in whatever it is you may do. And giving a 1 hour or 2 hour lesson would not take that away from you. If not, you wouldn't have put in that time to become an expert yourself. So don't worry about that. And it's always nice to help people out. And I guarantee you that people will come back and reward you for helping them out. So teaching is always a good way to go. Adapt, what does that mean? It's basically the easiest way to get yourself online. And if you're lucky, then basically all that means is that you can perform your service online. So the question you would ask is, can I simply perform my existing service online? So an example is online personal training. So as much as that, yes, you are in person and you may stand in front of a class and tell people what to do, it doesn't really matter how you tell them what to do, whether that's in person or through a virtual camera. So that is relatively easy to adapt, as the word may imply. Then recreate. So this kind of involves the photography example that I gave earlier. So can I find a previously unexplored or unseen part of my service and offer it as a teaching? So maybe your service is too specific or too physical that there's no way that you can give any sort of variation of the service online. Then if that's your case, then maybe you should look into other parts of your service that you may not have considered as a way to make money before, and recreate it and turn it into some sort of lesson or tutorial or anything that you could maybe benefit and create money out of. The next one is guide. So this is slightly different from teach, and I'll touch upon teach afterwards. But guide basically means or answers the question, can I guide people in doing what I usually do for them? So as a hairstylist or maybe a barber that cuts hair, as a better example, maybe people can hire you to guide them through cutting your hair. So maybe you live, with a friend or some other kind of roommate, and they can just watch you cut and guide you through the process. The reason this is different from teach, which is can I teach my skill at an amateur level, is because you're not necessarily teaching for long-term prosperity. And also maybe the teaching is slightly too hard. Hence, the first question obviously involves the word amateur, so amateur level. And cutting hair is not something you can simply guide once and then do for the rest of eternity. So guiding involves a little bit maybe higher skill work. That may require a bit more time to teach rather than just a little part of what you do. So think of it as rather than the hairdresser teaching them how to do the entire haircut from start to finish, they might actually teach a little part, which is, for example, how do I wash hair properly? So that you could teach, whereas the full service from start to finish may be something that you would preferably guide through. As like we mentioned, teaching takes a long time and you put in a lot of effort into that, whatever your service may be. So it just doesn't come in a 1 or 2 hour teaching format. Next, examples. The best way to learn is always through example. So a couple things that we've seen on our platform that people have adapted to are listed here. So I'll go through a couple of them, not every single one of them, but you feel free to pause and read them. But the first one is a chef decided to teach how to make a certain dish. So they decided that they specialized in 2 to 3 dishes, and they were Italian, and they decided that they wanted to teach that to people and thought that maybe it might be interesting for people to learn how to make it the original, correct, perfect way, so that people can maybe wow their roommates or their partner during quarantine. The obvious one, the yoga teacher, hosts online sessions now. So basically they video conference with their customers and do the session online. We had a live DJ who basically performs for clients, typically in the weekends, so that they can enjoy their night out with actually going out. We also have, interestingly, Ask Me Anything sessions, or AMAs for short, which is basically people hiring out their time for the customer's specific needs. So say you're a photographer, you can hire out your time for amateur photographers or other people to ask you questions about your actual service. So what we had happen was an amateur photographer asked the expert photographer how they took pictures. They asked them questions about different types of cameras, how they work, etc. And these tend to work really well. So that's kind of a nice way to also leverage your skill in a way that you may not have thought was possible before. How to set up an online experience through Mammalo. Now we'll quickly take you through how to do it on Mammalo, as once you have your online experience, you also need to be able to market it and create a portfolio to showcase it for people to see and buy. And the easiest way to do that is through Mammalo. So I'll show you how to do that now. This is mammalo.com, and I'm already logged in as our test profile, Marco. Basically what you need to do is sign up, And once you have, you'll come to this page and then you can click on your name. Once you've done that, you can click on My Services along the top banner and you'll be able to edit the services that you offer. So My Services, mark as a couple. Then you need to apply for a new service. You need to then select your category, which is online experience. And then let's do waxing online. Maybe I can teach about the specifics of waxing and create it. What you'll then need to do is add your prices, which I'll get to after, your years of experience. So let's say 5+ years. This description is a general description about yourself. So here you can put the qualifications that you've achieved, your experience, maybe any online experience, and any other relevant details that may make the customer feel comfortable. Feel comfortable. There we go. Then you can upload your qualifications in case you have any. This can simply be a picture or PDF scan of it. Any portfolio photos, so maybe of you doing whatever service it is you have in the past, as that tends to attract customers a lot. Cancellation policy, and the distance is irrelevant for now, so you can put any type of metrics as you want. Then click Save. That's for the first page. Now, as I mentioned before, you also need to add your prices. Usually you can do this from the beginning, but for the purpose of the video, it's easier to do this in a separate way. So we're going to add your prices. Select Add a New Item and give it an item name. Now, as you may recall, I selected waxing online. So I'm going to teach about the fundamentals of waxing. So waxing, teaching lesson. So lesson, basically, let's call it a lesson. Lesson. Then the price, I think I'm going to teach this in an hour, and for that hour I'm going to charge £20. Here are the minutes that I'm going to teach, of course, 60 minutes. Description, I will teach the fundamentals of waxing and how to get started by yourself. There we go. And click Save. This will create your online experience, and you'll have multiple cards here the more items that you add. There's no limit to it, so feel free to add as many as you want. Then simply go back, and it will be saved automatically, but click Save, and go back, and it will be here within your list. Now, tips and tricks. Now, to get you started online once you have your profile, we suggest that you use the same video conference provider and familiarize yourself with the provider before you actually start giving any real-life online lessons. This will ensure that there's no hiccups and it doesn't take up more of your time than necessary. Also, make sure you've practiced your newfound skill beforehand, maybe to yourself in the mirror or with your roommate. As much as that it may seem easy, online experiences are much harder if you haven't practiced, as you need to get used to the new format and teaching style. Also, it's better to teach and reel in additional business through upselling than it is to not do any online services at all. So this kind of touches upon that area of people being afraid to teach what they're doing and then being made redundant. It really does not work that way. And more importantly, it actually sets you up as a figurehead in your industry or your area or your niche. It really makes you that go-to person for any questions relating to whatever industry you may be in, and people will reward you for it. Also, lastly, it'll make sure that you are remembered. The last thing that you want after a period of downturn is to not be remembered after it goes back up. So having online experience, no matter the nature of them, will help with your own marketing and staying relevant and up to date. That was our lesson on how to adapt to COVID-19 as a freelancer. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on hello@mammalo.com.